Welcome, Dylan, to the Our Ability podcast.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
You're very welcome. I've been wanting to do this for a while now, mainly because of the things that we've been working on for the past almost year now, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Dylan, tell me a little bit about who you are and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, so my name is Dylan MacQuiod. I graduated from St. John Fisher College in 2020. I first got hired in the assembly in about 2021. I was working more as a central staffer role at CIS, and there I met Phil, Assemblymember Steck. Worked with him on campaigns. Really liked him, really enjoyed him. Had him for the past campaign, and then one day he called me and asked if I wanted to be his legislative director. I said, absolutely. So I've been in this role since January, and I'm really loving the role. It's a great role. I work with a great member, great staff. So this is kind of my dream job.
So, what is a legislative director? Help me out with that. And I've been around Albany for a while, and I certainly have run into that title before. But help me out. What is it?
Yeah, so it's mainly in charge on paper. It's mainly in charge of writing legislation, and helping to implement it. And what it's kind of I've been noticing, which not in the job description, is really kind of forming connections with people, having a lot of meetings to really talk about what you want to get accomplished and the best ways to doing that. Coalition building is another big aspect of it, especially with this bill. That's been, I think, one of the things that we have going for us is the big coalition we have. And then it's kind of doing a little bit of everything. You know, you're also doing some constituent stuff, still doing some communication stuff. So it's kind of like a jack of all trades. I think that's what a lot of assembly staffers kind of notice is that, no matter their titles, they're always doing a little bit of everything, which I really like because it kind of keeps everything fresh and everything day to day. It's something different. And so that is kind of the best definition that I could give. But you definitely have to learn a lot.
So tell us about Phil. I've known Phil Steck for a while, and I appreciate the work that he's doing. But give the listeners some highlights on who Assembly Member Phil Steck is and what he's interested in, because I think that would also help the community.
Yeah, so in the assembly, he's chair of the Alcoholism and Substance Abuse Committee. So that is kind of one aspect of his portfolio is how to increase access to treatment for alcoholism and substance use disorder. And then he also is a labor lawyer. So that's also a big interest of his is labor law. He's been practicing that for quite a while now. And that is one of his passions as well. And kind of going into that with our subminimum wage bill, that is an area that for him really strikes something because that he also used to be on the before the people with disabilities was a committee. He used to be on the task force for that. And that is where he kind of learned about the subminimum wage using that background and also being a labor lawyer. That's really what kind of piqued his interest on that bill. And I mean, he's great. I mean, we have like constituents call the office, and if they have a question, Phil is more than happy to call them and speak to them, which I feel like is really unique for assembly members that they're willing I'll give that person a call, and willing to call them up. And I think the one thing that he really likes to do is being out in the community, meeting people. He loves going door to door. So that really gives him a good sense of what the constituents really believe. He gets to hear it directly from them. And that's definitely what I think makes him one of the many reasons why he's the best member is just because he really likes to have a pulse on what his constituents are feeling. And he just likes talking with them and being with them.
So you talk about coalition building, and certainly the disability community is used to coalition building, but I want to talk about two parts of this. First, the coalition building that had to be done by you in the disability community. Talk to me about that in this what we tried to do here with subminimum wage. And in our last episode, we interviewed Alex Thompson, so we got a little bit of background, but we didn't get too in depth on the nuts and bolts of what we did together. And so I want to do that here. talk about the coalition building that you did, and I would say quite effectively in the disability community to get where we are today.
Yeah, so kind of when I first came in, and this was a piece of legislation that Phil and I both thought really strongly that this is something that's really important. Let's get it done. He said, yeah, you definitely need to kind of reach out to people and talk with them. So I remember speaking with you, Alex, and then kind of building up those connections that I found really effective is meeting people that other people are connected with that have an interest in the bill. We were able to get close to, I think, about 12 letters of support so far from different organizations. When you reach out to these organizations to talk about the bill, they also really want to see it done. So you kind of share a mutual goal, and that you both really want to move the bill forward, and they're willing to do anything to help. Everybody's been, very, very good about asking, please let me know what we can do to help. And it's just kind of having those conversations with people and realizing that, you all want the same goal, you all want to move together. And I found that people, are really approachable, that sometimes it can be a little intimidating to call up somebody that you've never really interacted with before and ask them for support. But once you do that, then they're absolutely willing to help you. So I found that, that's something that I find really essential about my job is reaching out to people, building coalitions so that you can have a broad base of support to help move your shared goal forward, that I found really effective. And I think that if we didn't have that with this bill, we definitely would not be where we are right now.
What is the subminimum wage bill? I'd like to get into that, and then we'll get back to coalition building on the other side of this. But what is the subminimum wage bill, and where does it stand today?
Yeah, so this was something that I did not know existed, that New York State is one of the, unfortunately, many states that allows employers to pay people with disabilities below the minimum wage. And from the research that I've done is that this was first enacted to try to incentivize to get people with disabilities into the workforce 50, 60, 70 years ago. And it's become an outdated practice today that employers can legally pay somebody that has a disability not an equal wage compared to somebody that's not disabled. And I think there's plenty of states, and what I find really interesting is that there, no matter if it's a traditionally red state or a blue state, there are plenty of red states and blue states that have outlawed this practice, including like Alaska, South Carolina, and Tennessee. They all kind of realize that this is not a good practice and it should be outlawed. And there are plenty of other states as well. There's about over a dozen states. And our bill would simply say that if you're an employer, you must pay somebody with a disability an equal fair wage. And it's something to me that I did not know existed in New York State, because New York likes to, we like to pride ourselves about being a very forward-thinking, progressive state, thinking about inclusion and equality. And this is one of the areas where, unfortunately, we're lacking. So our bill would simply outlaw this practice. We have over 30 co-sponsors from both majority members and minority members. So this is something that I think is a idea in a bill that appeals to everybody, no matter where they stand politically, that everybody realizes that this is an outdated practice. And we got very close this session with the bill. We're really hopeful that next session we'll be able to get it done, because we know exactly what we need to do. And I think using this off session to really build more support for the bill is going to help us. So once the legislature comes back in January, we can really hit the ground running with this bill. As I mentioned, we have close to about a dozen organizations supporting the bill that have written us letters of recommendation. I'm going to be meeting with a few more this week and next week. We're also talking with a few very well-known Fortune 500 companies who also have made the subminimum wage a priority of them. So I feel like we have, there's a lot more support that we're going to be generating for this bill. And again, I'll just reiterate that states like South Carolina, Tennessee have outlawed this practice, traditionally red states, that shows that this isn't really a political issue. It's, it's about treating people fairly and decently.
Yeah, and some states in our own backyard in New England as well. I mean, I think you're exactly right. It's not, it shouldn't be a red or blue issue. This is an economic issue and a humanitarian issue, and I think we have to put it in those terms so people understand that if you fundamentally believe there is a minimum wage in economics and society, and if you fundamentally believe that people with disabilities are the equals of others, then it seems to square that circle. There should be a no sub minimum wage salaries paid to people with disabilities. Unfortunately, not everybody agrees with us. Dylan, I remember when you called me about this, and this is not my day job. My day job is to build employment for individuals with disabilities through corporate America. That's what we do. Proud to do it. But this is one of the issues that has bothered me in New York State since I moved here. And I've had other go-arounds with other assembly persons, other senators in years past. So when you called me, it was sort of music to my ears that you wanted to do this. And so I was really excited and got on board. And I was also extremely disappointed when some of the people that we work with didn't support it the way I thought we should. So there's still some coalition building to do. There's some work to do, not only just in the assembly, but the Senate and the governor's office, quite frankly. But showing the 30 that have co-sponsored or signed on, showing the senators that have signed on, showing, you're exactly right, the Fortune 500 companies that are supportive of this. This is the way that we can build this coalition and bring awareness to this, because I think that's what's going to be needed in January. Do you agree on that?
Oh, completely. Because when I talk to people, friends and family who aren't as plugged into, the New York State politics or government, and I explain this bill to them, they all say, wait, that's legal? Like everybody, I think, doesn't think about it. And I feel like the more exposure we get on this topic, the more people will think that's a serious issue, and they'll pick up the phone and call their assembly member or senator, because it's one of those things that once you hear it, you kind of can't unhear it, because you think, wait a minute, how is that legal? And it unfortunately is in New York State.
Yeah, we've made progress, and I don't want to ignore that. About 20 years ago, I think there was 50,000 New Yorkers that were on subminimum wage contracts. Today, as of December 31st, 2024, it was down to 1,500 New Yorkers. Today, reportedly, it's about 350. I don't necessarily agree with that number. I don't think those contracts have been re-reported yet, and that's why I think the real number is somewhere around 1,500. But we have made progress down from 50,000 to 1,500, and so it always strikes me as why can't we fix this last 1,500 and do all the things that I said to do. But also there are other reasons. So Dylan, help the listeners understand what else we're hearing from the other side, because I think it's also important if we bring that up. I don't want to bring up specific names by any means, but if we can talk about what we hear, I want to try to combat that a little bit.
Yeah, there's kind of a misconception with the bill that if people think that those jobs will be eliminated, so then there won't be any other opportunities for people with disabilities. And that's completely untrue. We have letters of support from organizations like Living Resources, Stride Adaptive Sports, that are organizations that are good programs for people with disabilities that want to provide them with employment and want them to be independent, that these jobs that if they're eliminated, there are other programs out there and there are other jobs for people with disabilities. That's kind of the main point that Phil and I hear. And he points to, in the capital region, there's plenty of organizations that help people with disabilities. So that's kind of the common misconception with the bill, is that if the subminimum wage jobs are eliminated, there won't be anything else for people with disabilities. And I understand that point, but it's completely false. There are plenty of other opportunities and programs out there. And when you explain that to some people, then they come to realize, oh, maybe you're right. Like that's a good way to look at it. We did have one member, I won't name names, but before a committee meeting on the bill, pulled Phil aside and was, asking questions. And that was kind of one of his concerns. And Phil was able to explain to him, there's plenty of other programs like in the capital region and other parts of the state, like Long Island. And once he kind of talked to Phil about it and realized that, then he supported the bill and voted for it in committee. So I think once we kind of talk to people about that, then they come to realize at that point, well-intentioned is not valid. And then, then they agree with the premise of the bill.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. OPWDD has other programs for individuals with disabilities. We've figured out from the 50,000 down to the 1,500, as I said before. Other states have some statistics. I think it's Maryland that says that actually employment went up when subminimum wage was eliminated, and so and Maryland's not a red state by any stretch. So, there are other examples here, and then there's the other side of this, which is the small business side of it. If you're a supporter of small business or you're a supporter of economic development, keep in mind that these subminimum wage contracts are usually in competition with small businesses that have to pay higher wages, and it's not fair. So it's not only not fair to our community of people with disabilities, but it's also not fair to a competitive advantage for small businesses in the United States. So it's one of those things that if people really understood the 360 of this and got out of the me of this, I think we would have a better perspective. But that's also collectively our responsibility to share exactly the stories that we're doing so that we can help advance this.
Yeah, I think one of the best news pieces that was done on this was I think in June, a local affiliate in the New York City area did an interview with the owner of John's Crazy Socks.
Yeah.
And did a very, very well done interview showing the business side of it. And I thought that was really effective, and he was really able to speak to those concerns that, he's a small business owner. This is why he supports the bill because of X, Y, and Z. And that was, I think, one of the most well done pieces that we've ever had on the bill. Just hearing his perspective from it, and he reiterated those exact points that you just made.
Yeah, and let me editorialize here for a second. This is important federally too, because as the Trump administration continues to support subminimum wage, unfortunately, and actually take out some of the things that previous administrations, plural, I'm not going to name any of them, were doing to help our side of this cause, as the Trump administration sort of supports subminimum wage, New York State can still be a beacon for hope in this, and that's what we want New York State to be, a beacon of hope and an example of the best possible practices for individuals with disabilities. So there's my editorial federally. So I'll put that out there. Dylan, as we leave here, tell us what are our steps. Give us our action steps here as we approach 2026. What can listeners do? What can individuals do to advance this as we work forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing would be to, if your assembly member or senator, to look and see if they are a co-sponsor of the bill. It is A1006B. If you don't see your assembly member or your senator on there, absolutely, encourage them to co-sponsor the bill. And then also as well, if you're an organization that supports the bill, please reach out to us. As I mentioned, coalition building on this bill is really important. We are trying to generate as much support for the bill as possible. Getting letters of support is very effective. And I think also too, just kind of spreading the word about this bill, because like I mentioned, when I talk to some friends and family about it, this is something that they already assume is an illegal practice. But once they hear that it's actually legal to do this in New York State, they, think, wow, that's not just, that's bad, that needs to be changed. So I think spreading awareness on the bill is also really critical, because when people hear that, they want to take action on the bill. And like I mentioned, it transcends political boundaries. Red states have done this, blue states have done this. We have a good mix of bipartisan co-sponsors. So definitely get members to, co-sponsor the bill and spread as much awareness as possible.
Excellent. Dylan MacQuiod, Assemblymember Phil Steck's legislative director. I really appreciate it. And I have to say, as I've told you sort of privately, I appreciate the personal effort you're putting into this. It matters immensely. You have done a great job in coalition building. I know we're going to do a great job going into 2026. We will share the links to not only Crazy Socks, but to the bill in the postings that we do here. So we'll have all that available. Dylan, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate being on today.